Okay, so get this. We are diving deep today, like way deep into the origins of the universe, all that good stuff.
Oh yeah, buckle up.
You know how you were saying you wanted to explore creation stories? Well,
Right.
the source material we've got lined up for this deep dive is it's really something. It blends like cutting-edge science with ancient myths and even religious texts.
Ambitious.
Oh yeah, for sure.
What I find really fascinating about it, though, is how it tackles these, like, really big questions.
Yeah.
You know, questions about, like, where we came from, the
Yeah.
meaning of it, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And it doesn't shy away at all. It dives right in head first
Head first.
into both the scientific and spiritual perspective, looking at where they overlap, but also where they totally clash.
It's a wild ride.
It really is. So to kick things off, we got to start with some science, right? The Big Bang Theory.
Seems like a good place to start.
Right. It's kind of the go-to explanation for how everything got started, at least from the scientific perspective.
The prevailing theory for sure.
So, like, in a nutshell, it suggests that everything we see around us, all those stars, galaxies, even us,
Don't forget us.
right? Even us, all came from this unbelievably tiny, incredibly hot, dense point billions of years ago.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
Mind-boggling, right?
Yeah. But there's actually some pretty compelling evidence to back it up.
Mm.
Like, have you ever heard of cosmic microwave background radiation?
Oh, yeah, that's the afterglow of the Big Bang.
Exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
imagine the faint heat that's still radiating out from a massive explosion.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what scientists have detected. It's everywhere in the universe.
Well, okay, that is wild. But then here's where things get really interesting. Our source brings up this thing called the horizon problem. Have you heard of this?
I have. It's a tough one.
So basically, the universe is incredibly uniform in temperature,
Right.
even across these mind-blowingly vast distances. But here's the catch. The speed of light is constant. So how is it possible that parts of the universe, billions of light years apart, could be so similar? It's like if we both started running at the exact same time, but we were like miles apart, how did we synchronize our start if there wasn't enough time for us to like shout go to each other?
It's a real head scratcher,
Hmm.
and it highlights the limits of what we currently understand about the universe.
Yeah.
It suggests that maybe the Big Bang on its own isn't the whole story.
It's like a puzzle with a few missing pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got the scientific puzzle, right? But now hold on tight because our source takes us on this incredible journey back in time to explore creation myths from ancient cultures.
Oh, I love this part.
Me too. It's fascinating. We're talking the Sumerians, Egyptians, Aboriginal Australians cultures separated by tons of time and distance.
And what's remarkable is that despite these huge differences, they actually share a common thread in their creation stories.
Really?
Yeah, a recurring theme is this idea of creation emerging from a primordial ocean, often brought about by a single powerful being.
Whoa, it's like this echo resonating through history and across continents.
It makes you wonder, right? Is it just a coincidence, or is there something more fundamental about us as humans that makes us want to explain our existence in this way?
Right, like deep down in our collective consciousness or something?
Exactly. And you have to remember, these myths often have fantastical elements woven into them. Things that are probably more symbolic than meant to be taken literally.
Like that Sumerian myth where the earth is hanging by these golden chains.
I remember that one.
Yeah, right. It's a beautiful image.
But probably not scientifically accurate.
Probably not. What our source does is try to sift through these embellishments to find the core message.
The underlying truth.
Exactly. And that core message of creation coming from a single source? Well, it leads us perfectly to the next stage of the journey, exploring organized religion and how different faiths explain the beginning of everything.
From ancient myths to holy texts.
Exactly. So what does our source have to say about how the major religions view the universe's creation?
Well, it delves into a whole bunch of them. It starts with Judaism and Christianity, which have that well-known narrative of God creating the universe in 6 days and resting on the seventh.
Right.
But it also points out some of the challenges and inconsistencies within these accounts, especially when you compare them to scientific discoveries.
Like the age of the Earth and the universe, right?
Exactly. Science suggests billions of years, while certain interpretations of these religious texts point to a much shorter time frame.
Yeah, and then there are the differences in how they describe the cosmos. A flat Earth versus a spherical Earth. The Earth as the center of everything versus the sun.
All these contradictions make you think about how we interpret these texts and how our understanding changes over time.
It's like our knowledge is constantly evolving.
Absolutely. And this is where the source really starts digging deep, because it's not just presenting these different viewpoints, it's actively trying to find a way to reconcile them. It's looking for a narrative that makes sense of it all.
A unified theory of creation.
You could say that. And the search takes a really interesting turn when the source brings in Islam, specifically the Quran.
Oh, okay, the Quran. I'm interested to hear this.
Yeah, the Quran becomes really central to this whole exploration, mainly because of this bold claim it makes that it's a perfect, unchanging text, completely free from any errors.
That's a big claim, a perfect unchanging text. So is that even possible? Like, how does that hold up against science and these other religious stories?
Well, that's what's so interesting. The source doesn't back down. It goes right into the Quran's verses and looks for where things line up and where they don't. And what it finds is actually kind of amazing.
Okay, what did it find?
For example, the Quran also says creation took 6 days, just like the Bible. But but the Quran is careful to say that those days aren't like our days, 24 hours.
Ah, so that tackles the whole timeline issue we were talking about before.
Right, exactly. The Quran stresses that time isn't a rigid thing. There's even a verse that says, a day with your Lord is like 1,000 years of which you count. It's like God's experience of time is just on a whole other level.
Okay, that is mind-blowing when you really stop and think about it.
Right, and our source really gets going here.
Yeah.
It suggests that maybe this idea of flexible time, like the Quran talks about, could be the key to bridging the gap between science and religion.
Okay, I gotta know more. How does that even work? How does the Quran describe the universe itself with this flexible time idea?
Oh man, get ready for some serious imagery.
Mm.
The Quran talks about 7 heavens, each one totally unique with its own inhabitants and everything.
7 heavens. Are we talking like layers of reality beyond what we can see and touch?
That's the idea. Each heaven is distinct, and some are supposed to be populated by angels, prophets, all sorts of beings. But there's this one description that really stands out. It's the lot tree of the farthest boundary. Yeah, but it's not just any tree. It's this incredibly beautiful tree rooted in the 6th heaven with branches stretching up into the 7th. Our source really honed in on this image, calling out how stunning and magnificent it is.
It's amazing how something like a tree, which seems so ordinary, can become this powerful symbol, you know? Like, in this case, it represents this vastness and wonder of creation that's almost impossible to comprehend.
It really does. And that feeling of awe and wonder you're talking about, it just permeates the whole section about how the Quran describes the universe. It's like the source is acknowledging just how massive and complex everything is and how little we actually understand.
It's humbling, for sure.
Absolutely. But even though the source recognizes these limits, it doesn't stop searching. It keeps looking for connections for those threads that might tie these different perspectives together. And there's this one connection it makes that's really interesting. It goes back to something we were discussing earlier, the power of the spoken word.
Oh, you mean how a lot of ancient cultures believed that creation began with a divine utterance, that something was said that brought everything into existence?
Exactly. And the source links that directly to a phrase in the Quran, kun fayakun, which translates to be and it is.
Be and it is.
It's presented as the ultimate creative force, the very word of God that sets the entire universe in motion.
So you've got this ancient idea of creation through sound, and here it is again in the Quran. It's like a full circle moment.
It is, and it gets even more interesting. The source then compares this concept of a divine word as the creative force to certain models in theoretical physics. Some physicists, when they're trying to explain the Big Bang, talk about an unknown force that sparked everything from nothing.
Wait, are you serious? So we've got ancient myths, religious texts, and now cutting-edge theoretical physics all pointing to this idea of an unknowable force behind creation. That's insane.
It really is. It makes you wonder, could there be a deeper link between these ways of understanding how the universe began?
Makes you really think about all of this in a different way, you know? It's like we've touched on something huge, something humans have been wrestling with forever.
That's what I love about this source.
Yeah.
It doesn't try to force a neat little answer. It just throws out even more questions.
Which is way more exciting.
Exactly. It keeps that sense of wonder alive.
Totally.
Yeah.
So where does this leave us? We've gone through science and myths and these ancient texts. What's the takeaway? What's the big reveal about creation?
Well, the source is honest about it.
Yeah.
It says straight up that how the universe began is still a huge mystery.
Yeah.
It doesn't pretend to have all the answers, and it doesn't say one viewpoint is right or wrong. What it does say is that there's potential for finding common ground between science and culture and religion.
That's really cool. It's not about taking sides. It's
Yeah.
about being open to these different ways of looking at things, you know? The universe and our place in it.
I think that's the key to maybe understanding it all a little bit better. being open to these different perspectives.
It makes you wonder, like, if a single phrase like kun fayakun could really make the universe, what else is out there that we haven't even imagined yet?
That's a great question. One that we could spend a whole other deep dive exploring.
We just might have to do that. So until next time, thanks for coming along on this wild ride with us as we keep asking the big questions.
Always a pleasure.